Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Professor Tejendra Sharma from the Department of Commerce, Kurukshetra University, Kurukshetra. Today we are going to talk on the module Henry Fayol's Principles of Management from the paper Principles and Practices of Management. After studying this module, students, you will be able to know the meaning, nature and significance of principles of management and understand Henry Fayol's principles of management. You will also be able to elaborate the need and principles of management. One of the most significant contributions in developing the theory of management has been by the noted management guru Henry Fayol. In this module, we will study 14 principles which were given by him. With the changing times, these principles have been interpreted in various forms, but by and large, still they are largely true in most of the situations. So students, let us now learn Henry Fayol's principles of management. Before we understand them, let us first of all try to understand what exactly do we mean by a principle. According to George Terry, principle is a fundamental statement or a truth which provides a guide to action or thought. The term principle generally means the statement which is based on a cause and effect relationship. These principles are not purely cause and effect relationships just as we have in the case of sciences, but they are related to human behavior and the management of the persons working within an organization. The formation of a principle in the domain of management happens by two main mechanisms. The first is by observation and second is by experiment. By observations, the decisions of managers are analyzed on the basis of the conclusions, and by experiment, the conclusions are derived on the basis of experiments. The characteristics of the principles of management are that firstly, they are based on the human behavior. Management principles aim at influencing the behavior of the human beings. Therefore, the principles of management are primarily behavioral in nature. Second important characteristics of the principle of management is that they are universally applicable. There is a principle of universality, which means that different principles of management will apply in different situations. They may be suitably amended from time to time and from domain to domain. However, as a macro perspective, there is a sense of universality of principles. The third important characteristic of the principles is that these principles are flexible. Means principles are not like straight line, rigid things which need to be followed absolutely. They can be modified and changed according to the situation by the manager. The next characteristic of a principle is that they are a set of generalized observations. Means they are general conclusions and they provide direction to the management, but do not claim any guarantee for the desired results. These principles are formed over time by practice and experimentation. The principles of management are a collective wisdom of the managers as well as the scientific output of the experiments. These principles also exhibit a sense of cause and effect relationship, which is intended to establish this relation so that they can be used in similar situations in a large number of the cases. These principles are also contingent in nature, implying that these principles are dependent upon the prevailing situation at a particular point of time. And moreover, there is a characteristic of equal importance, implying that there is no inferiority or superiority between the principles. No one principle has got greater significance than another. And we cannot say that principle of unity of command is more important than the principle of unity of direction. In this way, all these principles, they are equally important. So with this background, students, let us now try to understand that why did we need these principles? The need of the principles of management arose when the management thought started taking up a shape in the formal theory. The need arose because there was a better analysis and interpretation of the human behavior. To understand the nature and complexities of management also, there was a need to have certain set of broad guidelines which became the principles of management. The third reason why the principles of management evolved was because there was an optimum utilization of the resources and an effective administration. The principles equip the managers to foresee the cause and effect relationships of the decisions and actions. Principles of management limit the boundary of managerial discretions, so their decisions may be free from personal prejudices and biases. They also direct the areas of training, meaning that principles of management identify the present and prospective areas of management. For this purpose, the managers should be specially trained. Business situations are themselves difficult and they change considerably with the change in the social, political, and the economic situations. So, the principles of management make significance in finding the areas and impart the requisite training programs to the executives. The principles also guide the research work in the management. Nowadays, there's a lot of research going on in the domain of management, and these principles, the scientific principle and the Henry Fayol's principle, and moreover the current theories, they also are becoming a basis for research. The principles help you to improve the productivity of the organizations as well as individuals and also attain the social objectives. In the present domain, an organization is viewed as an integral organ of the society, and the objectives of organization can be achieved only if the individual expectations of the persons are met. It is also giving a direction for training of the managers. So students, before we study Henry Fayol's principles of management, let us know a bit about Henry Fayol himself. Henry Fayol was a French industrialist who developed his concepts of administration. The 14 principles of management were propounded by him and are discussed in detail in his book, which was published in the year 1917. Originally in French, this book is entitled Administration Industrielle et Generale, published in English in 1949 as General and Industrial Management. He is also known as the father of general management. Henry Fayol divided the organizational activities into 6 broad functions. Those are, firstly, the technical functions, the commercial functions, the financial functions. The next 3 are the security, the accounting, and the managerial functions. The technical functions performed by an organization entail the engineering, production, manufacturing, and adaptation functions. All of these functions, being technical in nature, are put into this category. The commercial functions basically entailed the transactions, particularly the transactions where money is involved, and the typical activities in commercial functions as looked upon by Henry Fayol are the buying, the selling, and the exchanges that the organizations do. The third set of functions are the financial functions, wherein the search and optimum use of capital is done by the organizations. The next set of security functions, as looked upon by Henry Fayol, entailed the protection of the assets as well as the personnel which are working in the organizations. The next set of the functions performed by Henry Fayol are the accounting functions, which involve the activities like stock taking, balance sheets, costs, and statistical analysis of a lot of data which is generated in the organizations. The next set of functions which he looked upon are the managerial functions. The managerial functions which comprised of the activities such as planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling functions. On this basis of the view of organizations, Henry Fayol suggested certain general guidelines which hold true in multitude of situations, which are broadly known as Henry Fayol's 14 principles of management. These 14 principles of management are, firstly, the division of work. The second principle is the principle of authority. The third principle is the principle of discipline. Then we have the principles of unity of command and unity of direction. The next principle given by Henry Fayol was the subordination of individual interests over the organizational interests. The next principle was the principle of fair remuneration. Then the next set of principles given by Henry Fayol are the principles of centralization, the principle of scalar chain, the principle of order, the principle of equity, and the principle of initiative. There are principles of stability of tenure of personnel and employees, and the last principle given by Henry Fayol is the principle of esprit de corps. Division of work. This principle states that there should be a division of work amongst the persons. Every person should be assigned a separate job. Division of work implies distribution of activities in a logical way so that each person performs his assigned work only. There should not be any duplication of work, and for each work, only one person should be held liable or responsible for his performance. When we have assigned the right person to the right job, this is only on the basis of the underlying principle of division of work. The second principle of Henry Fayol is the principle of authority and responsibility. We need to understand these two terms very carefully. Authority basically implies the power or a right to instruct the subordinates and to get the things done, while responsibility, on the other hand, implies the extent to which a person is liable for one's performance. According to Henry Fayol, there should be a balance between the authority delegated to a person and his responsibility for being liable in case of deficiency in his performance. For example, if a person is delegated the responsibility to achieve a particular production target, then he also needs to be given sufficient authority to direct the subordinates for achieving that target. The positive impact of this principle is that there is no misuse of authority. It helps in the completion of job effectively and efficiently, and the individuals can be held accountable in case the job is not done. Moreover, it is a systematic and effective achievement of the organizational objectives. And in case this principle is violated, then there can be a misuse of authority. The responsibility cannot be discharged effectively, and no one can be held accountable. Moreover, there can be the conflicts between the management and the employees. The third principle of management, as given by Henry Fayol, is the principle of discipline. As the word discipline says, working in an orderly manner, the management must also work in an orderly manner. In an organization, different components must follow certain basic guidelines so that this discipline is maintained in the organization. The principle of discipline involves obedience, following the instructions and orders, as well as adherence to rules, procedures, and methods. According to Fayol, discipline requires good superior of all the levels. Moreover, there has to be a clear and fair agreement and a judicious application of the penalties. Suppose that management and labor unions, they have entered into an agreement whereby workers have agreed to put in some extra hours for additional payment to revive a firm out of the loss. In return, the management has promised to increase the wages of a worker when this mission is accomplished. Here, the discipline comes into force, which has to be applied, and it will mean that the workers and management both honor their commitments without any prejudice towards one another. The fourth principle given by Henry Fayol is the principle of unity of command. Unity of command is very essential for effective management because it has got certain benefits. It makes the authority and responsibility relationship clear to both superiors and subordinates. The unity of command basically means that one must have only one as a superior or a supervisor or a boss to report to, and not more than one. In case there are more than one persons whom a person has to report to, then in that case there can be confusion. So unity of command makes these relationship between authority and responsibility both clear to the superiors as well as subordinates. The orders issued to the subordinates are clear, and it helps in fixing the responsibilities. It eliminates frictions and clash among the superiors and also makes their relationship more harmonious. The fifth principle given by Henry Fayol is the principle of unity of direction. According to this principle, each group of activities with the same objective must have one head and one plan. Unity of direction is different from unity of command in a sense that the former is concerned with the functioning of the organization in respect to its grouping of activities. The latter is concerned with the personnel at all levels in the organization in terms of the reporting relationship. Let us try to understand with little more details the difference between unity of command and unity of direction. Unity of command basically means that an employee should receive orders from one superior, whereas unity of direction means that there should be one unit and there should be one plan for that unit. The purpose of unity of command is to ensure compliance of orders and instructions, while unity of direction aims at achieving better coordination. The unity of command is related to working of worksmen, while unity of direction is related to the entire organization. The unity of command spells out accountability, while unity of direction spells out the organizational objectives as a whole, as well as the departmental objectives. The sixth principle given by Henry Fayol is subordination of individual interests to the group interests. This principle proposes that employees must sacrifice their interests for the good of the organization. Thus, an organization should employ only the individuals who are fully committed to their objectives and are willing to readily comply with this mandate. This principle emphasizes that the individual objects are secondary and all have to work towards achieving the overall group objectives. For example, interests of various stakeholders, that is owners, shareholders, creditors, debtors, financiers, tax authorities, customers, and society at large cannot be sacrificed for one individual or a small group of individuals who want to exert the pressure on a firm. The positive impact of this principle is that it helps in achieving the organizational objectives and achieves a better coordination between individual and the organizational goals, leading to more harmony in the organization and increases the employees' respect for the organization. In case this principle is violated, then there can be difficulties in achieving the organizational goals. There can be conflicting situations within the organizations. There can be wastage of efforts, time, and resources, and there can be delays in the work. The next principle given by Henry Fayol is the principle of remuneration, which means that the remuneration should be paid to the workers in a fair, reasonable, satisfactory, and rewarding manner. As far as possible, it should accord the satisfaction to the employer as well as the employees, and the wages should be determined on the basis of living cost, work assigned, financial positioning of business, wage rate, etc. There should be a logical and appropriate wage rate, and the method of this payment should reduce the tension, and differences between workers and management should be such that remuneration creates more harmony and a pleasing atmosphere in the work. Fayol also recommended the provision of other benefits such as free education, medical, and residential facilities to the workers. The eighth principle given by Henry Fayol is the principle of centralization and decentralization. Centralization means concentration of authority at the top level. In other words, centralization is a situation in which the top management retains most of the decision-making authority. Decentralization means disposal of decision-making authority to all the levels of the organization. In other words, sharing authority downwards is decentralization. According to Fayol, degree of centralization or decentralization depends on a number of factors like the size of business, experience of superiors, dependability, and ability of the subordinates. Anything which increases the role of subordinate is decentralization, and anything which decreases it is centralization. Fayol suggested that absolute standardization or decentralization is not feasible, and an organization should strike a balance so as to achieve the best from the two. The next principle given by Henry Fayol is the principle of scalar chain. Scalar chain implies that the chain of superiors from the ultimate or the top authority to the lower ranks in the organization should be in a straight line. Means it refers to the route which the communications should follow while flowing from one level to the ultimate authority. There should be a scalar chain of authority and of communication ranging from the highest to the lowest. It suggests that each communication going up or coming down must flow through each position in the line of authority. The principle prescribes that every communication must follow the prescribed channels. The scalar chain can be illustrated in this diagram. There is a gang in which the workers A, B, C, D, E, F, G and L, M, N, O, P are communicating. The triangle GAN represents the scalar chain. Accordingly, if F has to communicate to P, then it has to follow the proper channel which will add to the discipline. But it is a lengthy process, can be time consuming, but it leads to better coordination. Sometimes gang planks develop, means the bridges wherein F and P are communicating directly, and this can be a type of a short circuiting which can happen in the organizations. These organizations are called informal organizations which may develop from time to time. The positive impact of this principle is that there is a clear communication of information, better relationship amongst the employees, systematic communication in the organizations, and a faster resolution to the organizational problems. The consequences of violation of this principle is that it causes bitterness in the relationship of the employees because they ignore the close supervisors. There can be improper communication because as communication flows across levels, there may be certain modifications. And moreover, it may be very difficult to find out the responsible person in this. The 10th principle given by Henry Fayol is the principle of order. Henry Fayol remarked that there should be a place for everything and everyone. It implies two things, one material and other social. This is a principle relating to the arrangement of things and people. In material order, there should be a place for everything and everything should be in the place. Similarly, in the social order, there should be a right man in the right place. This kind of order demands precise knowledge of the human requirements and the resources of the organizations and a constant balance between these requirements and the resources. The next principle is the principle of equity. Principle of equity employs just, fair, and reasonable treatment. This principle emphasizes kindliness and justice in the behavior of managers towards workers. This will ensure loyalty and devotion. All should be treated without any bias or discrimination on account of gender, religion, language, caste, belief, or nationality, etc. The next principle given by Henry Fayol is the principle of initiative. Initiative means self-action, action without motivation. Fayol emphasized that subordinates be given proper opportunity to take initiative while making and executing the plans. This principle helps the management to know more ways of executing and predetermining the plan as the employees give various suggestions. When the employees are involved in such a way in the management, they feel satisfied and take each and every action to accomplish the plan. This will make the working environment more interesting, more cooperative, and more effective. The next principle is the principle of esprit de corps, or union is strength. This means that a spirit of loyalty and devotion will unite the members of the group. It means that disregard for honor of the group to which one belongs should not be there. Henry Fayol suggests that there should be a team spirit in the organization and all the employees must consider themselves as the members of the organization. This principle is based on two theories. Firstly, that unity is strength, and secondly, unity is staff is the foundation of success in an organization. The last principle is the principle of stability of tenure. According to this principle, the job security must be provided by the organization to each personnel. In fact, if the personnel are secure about their job, then they will give their 100% contribution for achieving the predetermined goals of the organization. The positive impacts of this principle are that it develops a sense of belongingness towards the organization, improves the efficiency of the employees, minimizes wastage of resources, employee satisfaction, better accountability, and saves upon the time. And in case this principle is violated, there is non-achievement of the organizational objectives, lack of employee participation, dissatisfaction, and may also add to the cost of the organization. Students, you have studied the principles given by Henry Fayol as well as F.W. Taylor. The two management gurus gave the principles almost at the same time and have greatly contributed towards building the theory of management. However, the two have a lot of difference in their perspective and many other parameters. In order to understand them, it's important that we understand the differences between the perspectives on management of Henry Fayol as well as F.W. Taylor. The first difference of the two is the difference of perspective. As we have already discussed, Henry Fayol looked upon the organization from the perspective of a top level manager. He had been leading the teams and has performed the roles in the top managerial positions in many organizations. Therefore, his way of looking at the things has been from the perspective of a top manager. On the other hand, F.W. Taylor worked hard at all different levels of hierarchy, and as he rose above the hierarchy, he started observing various activities. Therefore, his perspective basically was getting maximum output at the shop floor level of the factory. The second difference between Henry Fayol and F.W. Taylor is on the principle of unity of command. While Henry Fayol was a staunch supporter of unity of command, implying that he wanted one boss for one employee, because this had many advantages which we have already studied, F.W. Taylor did not agree with this. He felt that it is important, particularly that the specialists give the instructions to the workers, even if it violates the principles of unity of command. For example, he has given the principle of functional foremanship. And in this principle of functional foremanship, a worker receives the orders from 8 different specialists. There are people specializing in planning, there are people specializing in production, and they are receiving the orders, the workers are receiving the orders from each of them. Now this is grossly violating the principle of unity of command. The third point of comparison between Henry Fayol and F.W. Taylor is in terms of the applicability. While Henry Fayol's principles are supposed to be applicable universally, Taylor's principles are more quantified and therefore they are applicable within the specified specialized conditions where they have been developed, because the parameters, the benchmarks and the quantified aspects of the management would vary in different situations. So this is another important difference between the two. The next difference is the basis, how they formulated the principles, the basis of formation. Henry Fayol, being a top man, was always observing the people, and he has formulated these principles on the basis of his personal experiences, on the basis of his analysis of his success as well as the failures in diverse situations, on the basis of which he formulated certain principles. Whereas F.W. Taylor made his principles on the basis of the observations and the experiments that he conducted. He had empirical data on the basis of which he concluded, and he made certain recommendations and devised the studies such as the time study, the motion study, the work study, the fatigue study, etc. Another point of comparison lies on the terms of focus. Henry Fayol's focus was on the overall organizational administration. Being a person from the top management, he looked at an organization from a holistic perspective, and he was more concerned about how the organization as a whole functions smoothly. Since on the other hand, Taylor concentrated more on increasing the production output, because he had worked more in the production levels, so his interest lied in getting the maximum output from the resources which are allocated in the production department. Another major difference which is observed in the two is in terms of their personality. Henry Fayol was a practitioner by nature because he practiced the principles of management and then he propounded them, whereas F.W. Taylor was a scientist because he played with the numbers, he played with the data, and then he arrived at the conclusions and gave his recommendations. And another point of comparison is in terms of the expression. Henry Fayol gave a general theory of administration, whereas F.W. Taylor gave the principles of scientific management. So these are some of the points which need to be considered while understanding the contribution of these two management gurus. So students, it's a time to summarize and relearn and recapitulate what we have already learned. In this module, we have learned that management principles are the guidelines to actions and they donate a cause and effect relationship. While the functions of management, that is planning, organizing, staffing, directing and controlling, are the actions to be taken while practicing management, the general principles help the managers to take the decisions while performing the principles. There are 14 principles which have been given by Henry Fayol. They can be used to manage the organizations, and these 14 principles are the useful tools for forecasting, planning, process management, organizational management, decision making, coordination and control.